The music's pounding, the lights are flashing, and the gym is packed with teens dancing under a sea of glittery streamers. It's prom night in a small town where everyone knows each other, and for 17-year-old Marcus, it's supposed to be the night of his life. He's got his best suit on, his friends are hyped, and he's ready to make memories. But by midnight, Marcus is gone. Vanished. No text, no call, no trace. His mom, Tanya, is pacing their living room, her phone glued to her hand, calling everyone she knows. The police say he's probably just out with friends, but Tanya's gut tells her something's wrong. Really wrong. She's a single mom who's raised Marcus to be kind, to always do the right thing, but now she's wondering if she missed something. Was he in trouble? Did someone hurt him? The town's buzzing with rumors, and Tanya's heart is breaking as she searches for answers. Days pass, and still nothing. Then, out of desperation, she steps into a quiet laundromat to clear her head, and that's when she sees it, something that stops her cold. Something that changes everything. But let's rewind. Earlier that week, Marcus was just another kid trying to make it through high school. He's the guy who always has a smile, who helps out without being asked. On a crowded bus one afternoon, he spots a pregnant woman struggling to stand. Without a second thought, he gives up his seat. She's a stranger, a white woman who looks exhausted, and she smiles gratefully. As she sits, she slips him a note. Just a small piece of paper, folded tight. Marcus doesn't think much of it at first, but when he opens it later, his eyes widen. The words written there. They're about to turn his world upside down. What did that note say? And how does it connect to him disappearing on prom night? Was it a warning, a promise, or something else entirely? Tanya's standing in that laundromat now, staring at a clue that could lead her to her son or to a truth she's not ready to face. One thing's for sure, Marcus's story is bigger than anyone could have imagined, and it's only just beginning. Stick around, because you won't believe what happens next. Tanya stood frozen in the laundromat, her eyes locked on the crumpled piece of paper taped to the bulletin board. It wasn't just any paper, it had Marcus's name scrawled across it in his unmistakable handwriting, the kind with loops on the M that he'd been doing since he was a kid. Her heart pounded as she reached for it, her fingers trembling. The laundromat was quiet, save for the hum of a dryer in the corner and the faint smell of detergent. A single fluorescent light flickered above, casting shadows on the faded linoleum floor. Tanya unfolded the paper, her breath catching. It wasn't the note from the pregnant woman on the bus that was still tucked in Marcus's jacket pocket, the one he'd shown her a few days ago, confused but curious. This was something else. A list. Names, dates, and places, none of which made sense to her. At the bottom, in Marcus's writing, were the words, "Don't trust anyone." Tanya's stomach twisted. What had her son gotten himself into? She stuffed the paper in her purse and glanced around, suddenly feeling like someone was watching. The laundromat was empty, but the weight of those words clung to her. She needed to find Marcus, and fast. Back at home, Tanya spread the paper out on the kitchen table, her coffee growing cold beside her. She'd barely slept in the 3 days since prom, her eyes red and puffy from crying. Marcus wasn't the kind of kid to just disappear. He was responsible, always checking in, always letting her know where he was. He'd been so excited for prom, saving up for weeks to rent that sharp navy suit. Tanya could still see him standing in the living room, grinning as she adjusted his tie, telling her he was gonna dance so hard he'd wear out his shoes. She'd laughed, teased him about his 2 left feet. Now, that memory felt like a punch to the gut. She stared at the list again, trying to make sense of it. The names weren't familiar, someone named Clara, another called J. Reynolds, and a place called Riverside Lot, 11 p.m. The date next to it was the night of prom. Tanya's mind raced. Had Marcus gone there instead of the dance? And why? She grabbed her phone and dialed his best friend, Devon, for the 3rd time that day. No answer. Devon had been dodging her calls since the police first questioned him, and it was starting to feel personal. Marcus's life had always been simple, or so Tanya thought. They lived in a modest house on the edge of town, just the 2 of them since his dad passed when he was 6. Tanya worked long hours at the diner, picking up extra shifts to keep the lights on, but she made sure Marcus had what he needed, school supplies, basketball sneakers, a phone to stay connected. He was a good kid, the kind who helped neighbors carry groceries or stayed late to tutor younger students. But lately, Tanya had noticed a change. Nothing big, just little things. He'd been quieter, spending more time on his phone, locking his screen when she walked by. She chalked it up to him being a teenager, maybe stressing about college applications. Now, she wondered if she'd missed something bigger. That note from the bus, the one the pregnant woman gave him, kept nagging at her. Marcus had shown it to her the day after he got it, his brow furrowed. "It's weird, Mom," he'd said, handing it over. The note was short, written in neat cursive, "You're one of the good ones. Meet me at Riverside Lot, 11 p.m., prom night. You'll understand everything." It was signed with just a C. Tanya had told him to ignore it, that it was probably some prank. But Marcus had kept it, and now she wondered if he'd gone to that meeting. The town of Willow Creek wasn't the kind of place where people disappeared. It was small, tight-knit, the kind of place where you couldn't sneeze without someone offering you a tissue. Prom was the biggest event of the year, held in the high school gym with cheesy decorations and a DJ who still played hits from the 2000s. Marcus had been talking about it for weeks, planning to go with Devon and a few other friends. Tanya had dropped him off at the gym herself, waving as he walked in, his suit jacket slung over one shoulder. She'd gone home, expecting a late-night call to pick him up. But by 1 a.m., when he hadn't texted, she started to worry. By 3 a.m., she was frantic, calling his phone over and over, only to hear it go straight to voicemail. She drove to the school, but the gym was dark, the parking lot empty except for a few soda cans and a lost high-heel shoe. The police were sympathetic but not much help. "Kids sneak off sometimes," the officer had said, scribbling in his notepad. "He'll turn up." Tanya wanted to scream. Marcus wasn't like that. He wouldn't just run off without a word. Devon was her next stop. She pulled up to his house, a small brick place with a basketball hoop out front. His mom answered, looking tired, and said Devon was at school. But Tanya knew the school was closed for a teacher workday. She drove to the park where the boys sometimes hung out, but it was empty. Devon was avoiding her, and she didn't know why. Had he been with Marcus that night? Did he know something? The thought made her chest tighten. She remembered the two of them as kids, riding bikes in the cul-de-sac, laughing so hard they'd fall over. Devon had been at their house almost every weekend, eating her pancakes, calling her Auntie Tanya. Now, he was a ghost, and it hurt almost as much as Marcus being gone. Back at the kitchen table, Tanya's eyes kept drifting to that note from the bus. The pregnant woman. Marcus had described her to Tanya, mid-30s, blonde hair, wearing a green coat. He'd said she seemed nice but tired, like she'd been on her feet all day. Tanya had asked why he gave up his seat, and he'd shrugged. "She needed it more than me." That was Marcus, always thinking of others. But who was she? And why had she given him that note? Tanya grabbed her laptop and searched Riverside Lot, hoping for a clue. It was an old industrial area by the river, mostly abandoned warehouses and overgrown weeds. Not a place kids went, especially not on prom night. The more she thought about it, the more it felt like Marcus had been pulled into something he didn't fully understand. She decided to retrace his steps. She drove to the bus stop where he'd met the woman, a busy corner near the grocery store. It was late afternoon now, the sun dipping low, casting long shadows. Tanya stood there, watching people pass, shoppers, kids on bikes, an old man feeding pigeons. No pregnant woman in a green coat. She asked a few regulars if they'd seen someone matching the description, but no one had. One woman, a cashier from the store, said she'd seen Marcus on the bus a few times that week, always alone, always looking at his phone. Seemed distracted, she said, adjusting her glasses. Not his usual self. Tanya's heart sank. What had been going on with him? Had he been hiding something? As she drove home, her phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "Stop looking, Tanya. He's safe. For now." Her hands shook so hard she nearly dropped the phone. She pulled over, staring at the screen. Who was this? How did they know her name? She tried calling the number, but it went straight to a generic voicemail. Her mind spun. Marcus was alive, that's what the text said, right? But "for now" echoed in her head, cold and threatening. She thought of the list in the laundromat, the note from the bus, Devon dodging her. Pieces of a puzzle she couldn't fit together. She wanted to believe Marcus was okay, but the fear in her gut was growing. Someone knew where he was. Someone was watching her. And whatever Marcus had stumbled into, it was far from over. Tanya's hands were still shaking as she sat in her car, the mysterious text glowing on her phone screen. "Stop looking, Tanya. He's safe. For now." The words felt like a blade, sharp and cold, cutting through the fog of her exhaustion. She wanted to believe Marcus was safe, but the "for now" hung heavy, like a storm cloud ready to burst. Who sent this? How did they know her name? Her first instinct was to call the police, but something stopped her. The note from the laundromat, with Marcus's warning, "Don't trust anyone," echoed in her mind. Was this text a trick to scare her off, or was someone genuinely watching out for her son? She glanced at the rearview mirror, half expecting to see someone lurking in the shadows of the empty street. Willow Creek was too quiet tonight, the kind of quiet that made your skin crawl. Tanya locked her doors and drove home, her mind racing with questions she couldn't answer. At the house, she double-checked the locks and pulled the curtains tight, feeling like a target in her own home. She spread out everything she had, the laundromat list, the bus note, and now a screenshot of the text. The list was the most confusing. Names like Clara and Jay Reynolds, places like Riverside Lot, and random dates that didn't line up with anything she knew about Marcus's life. She tried searching the names online, but nothing came up, no social media, no news articles, nothing. It was like these people didn't exist. The bus note, though, was different. That C at the bottom, could it be Clara from the list? Tanya's head through uplink was pulsing, but she couldn't stop. She grabbed a notepad and started jotting down everything Marcus had said about the pregnant woman. Blonde hair, green coat, tired eyes. He'd mentioned she was carrying a small black bag, the kind you'd use for a laptop or books. It wasn't much, but it was something. Tanya wondered if the woman was local or just passing through. Willow Creek wasn't exactly a tourist spot, so why was she here, and why had she singled out Marcus? Across town, Devon was holed up in his bedroom, the blinds drawn, his phone buzzing with unread messages from Tanya. He felt awful ignoring her, but every time he thought about calling back, his stomach knotted up. He knew more than he was letting on, but he wasn't sure how much he could say without making things worse. The night of prom, he and Marcus had been tight, laughing and taking selfies in their suits before heading to the gym. But Marcus had been acting strange all week, checking his phone constantly, muttering about needing to figure something out. Devon had pressed him, but Marcus brushed it off, saying it was just school stuff. Then, at prom, Marcus disappeared halfway through the night. Devon thought he'd just stepped out for air, but when he didn't come back, Devon got worried. He'd texted him, called him, even checked the bathrooms. Nothing. The next day, when Tanya called, Devon panicked. He didn't want to lie, but he didn't want to spill everything either, not until he knew what was going on. Because the truth was, Marcus had told him about the note from the bus, and Devon had a bad feeling it was connected. Devon's own life wasn't exactly smooth sailing. His dad had been in and out of jail, and his mom worked double shifts at the hospital, leaving him to fend for himself most days. Marcus was like a brother, the one person who always had his back. But now, Devon was stuck, caught between loyalty to Marcus and the fear of getting dragged into something dangerous. He'd seen things in Willow Creek lately, shady cars parked near the river, hushed conversations at the gas station that stopped when he walked by. The town wasn't as innocent as it seemed, and Marcus's disappearance was starting to feel like part of something bigger. Devon pulled out his phone and scrolled to a photo from prom, him and Marcus, arms around each other, grinning like nothing could touch them. He wanted to believe Marcus was okay, but the longer he stayed gone, the harder it was to hold on to that hope. Meanwhile, Tanya decided to take matters into her own hands. The police weren't moving fast enough, and that text had lit a fire under her. She drove to Riverside Lot, the place mentioned in both the bus note and the laundromat list. It was past 9 p.m., and the area was pitch black, the only light coming from a flickering street lamp. The lot was a ghost town, crumbling warehouses, rusted chain-link fences, and weeds poking through cracked pavement. Tanya parked and gripped her flashlight, her heart thudding. She didn't know what she was looking for, but she had to do something. As she stepped out, the air felt heavy, like the place was holding its breath. She scanned the ground, hoping for a clue, a shoe, a phone, anything. That's when she saw it, a small black bag, half hidden under a pile of leaves. Her pulse spiked. It matched Marcus's description of the pregnant woman's bag. She knelt down, her hands shaking as she unzipped it. Inside were papers, a flash drive, and a photo of a group of people she didn't recognize. One face stood out, though, a man with a scar above his eyebrow. She didn't know why, but he looked familiar, like someone she'd seen around town. Back at the police station, Officer Ramirez was going through Marcus's file, feeling a pang of guilt. He'd told Tanya that kids like Marcus usually turn up, but deep down, he wasn't so sure. Willow Creek had been quiet for years, but lately, strange things were happening, reports of unfamiliar cars, petty thefts, even whispers of deals going down by the river. Ramirez had grown up here, and he knew the town had its secrets. He pulled up Marcus's phone records, something he hadn't shared with Tanya yet. The last call Marcus made was to a number that traced back to a burner phone, untraceable. The call lasted less than a minute, just before midnight on prom night. Ramirez leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. He didn't want to scare Tanya, but this wasn't looking like a simple runaway case. He thought about the pregnant woman Marcus had mentioned to his mom. Could she be involved? Ramirez made a note to check bus schedules and security footage from the grocery store stop. If that woman was still in town, he needed to find her. Tanya, back in her car, clutched the black bag like it was her only lifeline to Marcus. She didn't dare look through the papers yet, not here, not in the dark where every rustle of leaves felt like a threat. She drove home, her mind spinning with possibilities. Was the woman working with someone? Was Marcus caught up in something illegal? The thought made her sick. Her son wasn't perfect, but he wasn't a criminal. Still, that list, the note, the text, they all pointed to something bigger than a teenager's bad decision. When she got home, she locked the door and spread the bag's contents on the table. The papers were cryptic charts, numbers, and coded words she couldn't decipher. The flash drive was tempting, but her old laptop was too slow to handle it tonight. The photo, though, kept drawing her eye. That man with the scar. She'd seen him before, maybe at the diner or the gas station. Her phone buzzed again, another text from the unknown number. "You're getting too close. Back off." Tanya's breath hitched. She looked around her quiet house, the shadows suddenly feeling alive. Someone knew what she'd found. Someone was watching. And Marcus was still out there, caught in a web she was only starting to untangle. Tanya's heart pounded as she stared at the new text. "You're getting too close. Back off." The words burned into her, each one a warning she couldn't ignore. Her kitchen, once a place of warmth with Marcus's laughter and late-night snacks, now felt like a trap. The papers from the black bag were spread across the table, the photo of the scarred man glaring up at her. She couldn't shake the feeling that he was the key to everything: Marcus's disappearance, the cryptic notes, the texts. Her hands trembled as she shoved the papers and flash drive into a drawer, hiding them behind a stack of old bills. She didn't know who was watching, but she wasn't taking chances. The house was too quiet, the tick of the clock like a countdown to something awful. Tanya grabbed her phone and texted Devon again, her message short and desperate. "Please, I need to know what happened to Marcus. Call me." She waited, staring at the screen, but no reply came. Her chest tightened. Everyone she needed, Marcus, Devon, even the police, felt out of reach, and the walls were closing in. Outside, a car engine rumbled, then cut off. Tanya froze, her breath shallow. She crept to the living room window and peeked through the curtains. A dark sedan was parked across the street, its lights off, but she couldn't see if anyone was inside. Her pulse raced. Was this the person texting her? Had they followed her from Riverside Lot? She thought about calling Officer Ramirez, but Marcus's warning, "Don't trust anyone," stopped her. Instead, she grabbed a kitchen knife and tucked it in her jacket pocket, feeling ridiculous but terrified. She wasn't a fighter, just a mom trying to find her son, but fear was pushing her to places she'd never been. The sedan didn't move, but the weight of its presence pressed on her. She slipped out the back door, sticking to the shadows of her yard, and headed toward the one place she hadn't checked yet, the old community center where Marcus used to play basketball. It was a long shot, but he'd mentioned it a few times recently, saying he was meeting some people there. At the time, Tanya thought he meant his teammates. Now, she wasn't so sure. The community center was a mile away, and the walk through Willow Creek's quiet streets felt like stepping into a nightmare. Every rustle of leaves, every distant dog bark, made her jump. The knife in her pocket was a cold reminder of how far things had spiraled. She kept thinking about Marcus, his smile, his voice, the way he'd hug her after a long day. He was out there somewhere, and she had to believe he was still okay. The community center loomed ahead, its brick walls tagged with faded graffiti, the parking lot empty except for a single streetlight casting a weak glow. The front doors were locked, but Tanya circled around to the back, where the gym entrance was. To her surprise, the door was slightly ajar, a sliver of light spilling out. Her stomach twisted. Someone was inside. She hesitated, her hand on the knife, then pushed the door open just enough to slip through. Inside, the gym smelled of sweat and old wood, the basketball court silent except for a faint drip from a leaky pipe. Tanya's eyes darted to the bleachers, where a figure sat hunched over, head in their hands. Her heart leapt, it was Devon. He looked up, startled, his face pale under the dim lights. "Tanya," he whispered, his voice cracking. "What are you doing here?" She rushed toward him, relief and anger colliding. "Devon, where's Marcus? Why haven't you answered me?" He stood, backing away, his hands raised like he was warding her off. "I didn't mean to look, it's complicated, okay? I don't know everything." His eyes were wide, scared, and Tanya noticed a bruise on his cheek, fresh and purple. "What happened to you?" she asked, her voice softening despite her frustration. Devon shook his head, glancing at the door like he expected someone to burst in. "You need to stop looking, Tanya. They're not playing around." Before she could press him further, a loud bang echoed from the front of the building. Devon flinched, grabbing her arm. "We gotta go, now," he hissed. Tanya's mind raced. Who was they? Was this connected to the texts, the scarred man, the black bag? She followed Devon toward a side exit, her heart hammering as footsteps echoed closer. They slipped out into the night, ducking behind a dumpster as a flashlight beam swept the parking lot. Tanya held her breath, clutching Devon's sleeve. The beam passed, and she heard voices, low, urgent, too muffled to make out. Devon was trembling, his eyes locked on the ground. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "Marcus told me to stay out of it, but I didn't listen." Tanya's throat tightened. "Stay out of what, Devon? What did he get into?" He looked at her, his face torn with guilt. "It started with that woman on the bus. The note. She wasn't random, Tanya. She knew him." Back at the police station, Officer Ramirez was piecing together his own puzzle. The bus stop security footage had finally come through, grainy but clear enough to show Marcus talking to a blonde woman in a green coat. She was pregnant, just as he described, and the way she handed him the note looked deliberate, like she'd been waiting for him. Ramirez paused the video, zooming in on her face. She wasn't a local, he'd have recognized her. He sent the image to a colleague in the next county, hoping for a match. The burner phone Marcus had called was another dead end, but Ramirez couldn't shake the feeling that Riverside Lot was the center of this. He'd driven by there earlier, noticing fresh tire tracks in the mud, too clean for a place that was supposedly abandoned. He was starting to suspect Marcus had stumbled into something dangerous, maybe a deal, maybe a secret someone wanted buried. The thought made him uneasy. Willow Creek was his home, but it had shadows he'd never fully explored. Tanya and Devon were back at her house now, the knife still in her pocket, her nerves frayed. Devon sat on the couch, his hands clasped tight, finally ready to talk. "Marcus didn't tell me everything," he started, his voice low. "But that note from the woman, it was about something big. She said she needed his help, that he was the only one she could trust." Tanya leaned forward, her heart in her throat. "Help with what?" Devon swallowed hard. "She was running from someone. Said they were after her, And Marcus, he wanted to do the right thing. He always does. Tanya's mind flashed to the laundromat list, the scarred man, the coded papers. Was the woman hiding from him? And why drag Marcus into it? Before Devon could say more, her phone buzzed again. Another text from the unknown number. You were warned. Next time, we won't miss. Attached was a photo, a blurry shot of Marcus, his hands tied, his face bruised but alive. Tanya's world tilted, her breath catching as she stared at her son's terrified eyes. The climax was coming, and she was running out of time. Tanya's hands shook as she gripped her phone, the blurry photo of Marcus searing into her mind. His bruised face, his hands tied, his eyes wide with fear, it was a nightmare she couldn't wake from. The text accompanying it, you were warned. Next time, we won't miss, felt like a noose tightening around her heart. She barely registered Devon's voice, his words tumbling out in a panicked rush. Tanya, what is it? What's wrong? She turned the phone toward him, her voice barely a whisper. It's Marcus. They have him. Devon's face drained of color, his eyes darting to the screen. He sank back onto the couch, muttering, this is my fault. I should have stopped him. Tanya's fear morphed into a fierce resolve. She grabbed his shoulders, forcing him to meet her gaze. Devon, you need to tell me everything. Right now. No more secrets. The room was heavy with tension, the air thick with the weight of what was coming. Outside, the dark sedan was still parked across the street, its presence a silent threat. Tanya's world was unraveling, and the clock was ticking. Devon took a shaky breath, his hands fidgeting. Okay, but you gotta promise not to hate me. Marcus, he wasn't just helping that woman. He was digging into something dangerous. After she gave him that note on the bus, he started asking questions, looking up stuff online. He found out she was connected to some kind of, I don't know, like a network. People moving stuff through Willow Creek money, maybe worse. Tanya's stomach dropped. Moving stuff? Like what? Devon hesitated, his voice low. He didn't say exactly, but he mentioned Riverside Lot a lot. Said it wasn't abandoned like everyone thinks. There's people there, Tanya. People who don't want to be found. Her mind flashed to the black bag she'd found, the coded papers, the flash drive. Was Marcus caught up in something criminal? Her son, the kid who gave up his seat for a stranger, who helped old ladies with their groceries, how had he gotten tangled in this? Devon's next words hit like a punch. And there's something else. That woman. She wasn't pregnant. Marcus saw her again, without the belly. It was fake. The revelation landed like a thunderclap, twisting everything Tanya thought she knew. The woman on the bus, the one who'd seemed so tired, so vulnerable, was it all an act? Had she targeted Marcus, played on his kindness to pull him into this mess? Tanya's head spun. The note, the meeting at Riverside Lot, the list in the laundromat, it all pointed to a setup. But why Marcus? She stood, pacing the living room, her thoughts racing. Why didn't he tell me? She asked, more to herself than Devon. He shrugged, his voice small. He didn't want you to worry. Said he could handle it. Tanya's eyes stung with tears. Her boy, trying to be a hero, was now a prisoner in a photo, and she was no closer to saving him. The knife in her pocket felt heavier, a reminder of how far she'd go to bring him home. But the fake pregnancy was a curveball she hadn't seen coming, and it raised the stakes in a way that made her blood run cold. She grabbed the black bag's contents from the drawer, spreading them out again. The photo of the scarred man stared back, his face now hauntingly familiar. She'd seen him, she was sure of it, not just at the diner or gas station, but somewhere else, somewhere tied to Marcus. Then it hit her, the community center. He'd been there one evening when she'd picked Marcus up from basketball practice, leaning against a car in the parking lot, watching the kids leave. She hadn't thought much of it at the time, but now it felt like a clue she'd missed. Devon, she said, her voice urgent, this guy. Have you seen him? She held up the photo, and Devon's eyes widened. Yeah. He was at Riverside Lot one night. Marcus pointed him out, said he was bad news. Tanya's heart pounded. The scarred man was no random stranger, he was part of this, maybe the one pulling the strings. And if he was watching Marcus back then, He could be the one holding him now. Before she could ask more, a loud knock at the front door made them both jump. Tanya's hand flew to the knife in her pocket, her pulse racing. Devon whispered, "Don't answer it." But the knocking grew louder, insistent, followed by a voice she recognized, Officer Ramirez. "Tanya, it's me. Open the door. We need to talk." Relief washed over her, but it was short-lived. Marcus's warning, "Don't trust anyone," rang in her ears. Ramirez had been kind, but what if he was involved? She glanced at Devon, who shook his head, his face tight with fear. The knocking stopped, and she heard footsteps moving around the house, toward the back. Her stomach twisted. Was Ramirez alone, or was someone with him? She motioned for Devon to stay quiet and crept to the kitchen, peering out the window. The dark sedan was gone, but a new car was parked in its place, one she didn't recognize. Her phone buzzed again, another text from the unknown number, "You can't hide. Bring the bag to Riverside Lot. Midnight. Or he's gone." Attached was another photo of Marcus, this time with a cloth over his mouth, his eyes pleading. Tanya's breath caught, her world narrowing to that image. Midnight was 2 hours away, and Riverside Lot was a trap, she knew it. But what choice did she have? The bag, with its papers and flash drive, was clearly what they wanted, but giving it up could mean losing her only leverage. And the woman's fake pregnancy added a new layer of deception, making Tanya question everything. Was she the mastermind, or just another pawn? Devon grabbed her arm, his voice shaking. "You can't go, Tanya. They'll hurt you too." But she shook her head, her jaw set. "He's my son. I'm not losing him." She stuffed the bag under the couch, keeping only the photo of the scarred man. If she was walking into a trap, she'd do it on her terms. The stakes were higher than ever, and the truth about Marcus's disappearance was just out of reach, buried in a web of lies and danger that was tightening around them all. Tanya's hands shook as she gripped her phone, the blurry photo of Marcus searing into her mind. His bruised face, his hands tied, his eyes wide with fear, it was a nightmare she couldn't wake from. The text accompanying it, "You were warned. Next time, we won't miss," felt like a noose tightening around her heart. She barely registered Devon's voice, his words tumbling out in a panicked rush. "Tanya, what is it? What's wrong?" She turned the phone toward him, her voice barely a whisper. "It's Marcus. They have him." Devon's face drained of color, his eyes darting to the screen. He sank back onto the couch, muttering, "This is my fault. I should have stopped him." Tanya's fear morphed into a fierce resolve. She grabbed his shoulders, forcing him to meet her gaze. "Devon, you need to tell me everything. Right now. No more secrets." The room was heavy with tension, the air thick with the weight of what was coming. Outside, the dark sedan was still parked across the street, its presence a silent threat. Tanya's world was unraveling, and the clock was ticking. Devon took a shaky breath, his hands fidgeting. "Okay, but you gotta promise not to hate me." Marcus, he wasn't just helping that woman. He was digging into something dangerous. After she gave him that note on the bus, he started asking questions, looking up stuff online. He found out she was connected to some kind of, I don't know, like a network. People moving stuff through Willow Creek money, maybe worse. Tanya's stomach dropped. Moving stuff? Like what? Devon hesitated, his voice low. He didn't say exactly, but he mentioned Riverside Lot a lot. Said it wasn't abandoned like everyone thinks. There's people there, Tanya. People who don't want to be found. Her mind flashed to the black bag she'd found, the coded papers, the flash drive. Was Marcus caught up in something criminal? Her son, the kid who gave up his seat for a stranger, who helped old ladies with their groceries, how had he gotten tangled in this? Devon's next words hit like a punch. And there's something else. That woman. She wasn't pregnant. Marcus saw her again, without the belly. It was fake. The revelation landed like a thunderclap, twisting everything Tanya thought she knew. The woman on the bus, the one who'd seemed so tired, so vulnerable, was it all an act? Had she targeted Marcus, played on his kindness to pull him into this mess? Tanya's head spun. The note, the meeting at Riverside Lot, the list in the laundromat, it all pointed to a setup, But why Marcus? She stood, pacing the living room, her thoughts racing. Why didn't he tell me? She asked, more to herself than Devon. He shrugged, his voice small. He didn't want you to worry. Said he could handle it. Tanya's eyes stung with tears. Her boy, trying to be a hero, was now a prisoner in a photo, and she was no closer to saving him. The knife in her pocket felt heavier, a reminder of how far she'd go to bring him home. But the fake pregnancy was a curveball she hadn't seen coming, and it raised the stakes in a way that made her blood run cold. She grabbed the black bag's contents from the drawer, spreading them out again. The photo of the scarred man stared back, his face now hauntingly familiar. She'd seen him, she was sure of it, not just at the diner or gas station, but somewhere else, somewhere tied to Marcus. Then it hit her, the community center. He'd been there one evening when she'd picked Marcus up from basketball practice, leaning against a car in the parking lot, watching the kids leave. She hadn't thought much of it at the time, but now it felt like a clue she'd missed. Devon, she said, her voice urgent, this guy. Have you seen him? She held up the photo, and Devon's eyes widened. Yeah. He was at Riverside Lot one night. Marcus pointed him out, said he was bad news. Tanya's heart pounded. The scarred man was no random stranger, he was part of this, maybe the one pulling the strings. And if he was watching Marcus back then, he could be the one holding him now. Before she could ask more, a loud knock at the front door made them both jump. Tanya's hand flew to the knife in her pocket, her pulse racing. Devon whispered, "Don't answer it." But the knocking grew louder, insistent, followed by a voice she recognized, Officer Ramirez. "Tanya, it's me. Open the door. We need to talk." Relief washed over her, but it was short-lived. Marcus's warning, "Don't trust anyone," rang in her ears. Ramirez had been kind, but what if he was involved? She glanced at Devon, who shook his head, his face tight with fear. The knocking stopped, and she heard footsteps moving around the house, toward the back. Her stomach twisted. Was Ramirez alone, or was someone with him? She motioned for Devon to stay quiet and crept to the kitchen, peering out the window. The dark sedan was gone, but a new car was parked in its place, one she didn't recognize. Her phone buzzed again, another text from the unknown number, "You can't hide. Bring the bag to Riverside Lot. Midnight. Or he's gone." Attached was another photo of Marcus, this time with a cloth over his mouth, his eyes pleading. Tanya's breath caught, her world narrowing to that image. Midnight was 2 hours away, and Riverside Lot was a trap, she knew it. But what choice did she have? The bag, with its papers and flash drive, was clearly what they wanted, but giving it up could mean losing her only leverage. And the woman's fake pregnancy added a new layer of deception, making Tanya question everything. Was she the mastermind, or just another pawn? Devon grabbed her arm, his voice shaking. "You can't go, Tanya. They'll hurt you too." But she shook her head, her jaw set. "He's my son. I'm not losing him." She stuffed the bag under the couch, keeping only the photo of the scarred man. If she was walking into a trap, she'd do it on her terms. The stakes were higher than ever, and the truth about Marcus's disappearance was just out of reach, buried in a web of lies and danger that was tightening around them all. The laundromat's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a pale glow over the worn linoleum floor. Alia's mom, Tanya, stood frozen, her eyes locked on the crumpled prom dress in the corner, a deep purple satin, the same one Alia had spent weeks picking out. Her heart pounded so loud she barely heard the dryer's rhythmic thump. She stepped closer, her hands trembling as she reached for the dress. It was torn at the hem, a smear of dirt streaking the fabric. Tanya's breath caught. This wasn't just any dress. It was her daughter's. Her mind raced with questions. Why was it here? Where was Alia? Across town, Jamal sat on the bus, the mysterious note still clutched in his hand. The pregnant woman who'd given it to him had slipped off at the next stop, her face unreadable. He unfolded the paper, his eyes scanning the hurried scrawl, "Find Alia. She's in trouble. 214, Oak Street. Hurry." Jamal's stomach twisted. He didn't know any Alia, but the urgency in those words hit him like a punch. Oak Street was rough, abandoned warehouses, sketchy corners. Why him? He glanced around the bus, half expecting someone to be watching, but it was just tired commuters and flickering lights. Something told him he couldn't ignore this. Tanya, meanwhile, was piecing things together in the laundromat. She noticed a backpack tucked behind a broken washing machine, half hidden under a pile of lint-covered towels. It was Aliya's, the one she'd slung over her shoulder before heading to prom. Tanya's hands shook as she unzipped it, finding Aliya's phone inside, the screen cracked but still powered on. A notification blinked, a text from an unknown number, sent just hours ago. "Meet me at 214, Oak Street. Don't tell anyone." Tanya's knees buckled. She didn't know what was happening, but every instinct screamed danger. She clutched the phone and dress, her mind spinning. The laundromat's lone worker, an older man wiping down a counter, glanced her way. "You okay, he asked, his voice gruff but kind. Tanya barely heard him. "My daughter," she whispered, "she's missing." The man's face softened, and he nodded toward the door. "You need to call the cops. Or go find her. That address, Oak Street. It ain't a good place." Tanya didn't wait. She was out the door, Aliya's belongings in her arms, her car keys already in hand. Jamal, meanwhile, was wrestling with his own decision. The bus was nearing his stop, but 214, Oak Street was in the opposite direction. He thought about his mom, who'd raised him to do the right thing, even when it was hard. He thought about the woman on the bus, how her eyes had held a quiet plea. He didn't know Aliya, but he knew what it was like to feel alone, to need someone to step up. With a deep breath, he pulled the cord to signal the driver. He was getting off early. As he stepped onto the cracked sidewalk, the night air hit him, sharp and cold. Oak Street was a good 20-minute walk, and his phone was nearly dead. He stuffed the note in his pocket and started moving, his sneakers crunching against gravel. The city felt different now, like it was holding its breath. He passed flickering streetlights and boarded-up shops, his pulse quickening with every step. What was he walking into? Tanya's car screeched to a stop outside 214, Oak Street, an old warehouse with broken windows and graffiti snaking up its walls. The street was eerily quiet, the kind of quiet that made your skin crawl. She gripped Aliya's phone, her thumb hovering over the call button for the police. But something stopped her. If Aliya was inside, she couldn't risk waiting. She slipped out of the car, her sneakers silent against the pavement. The warehouse door was ajar, a sliver of dim light spilling out. Her heart hammered as she pushed it open, stepping into a cavernous space that smelled of rust and damp concrete. Somewhere in the distance, she heard voices, low, urgent. She crept forward, her eyes adjusting to the shadows. That's when she saw her. Aliya, sitting on a crate, her wrists bound with zip ties. She wasn't alone. Two guys stood nearby, one pacing, the other scrolling on his phone. Tanya's blood ran cold. She ducked behind a stack of pallets, her mind racing. How had her daughter ended up here? Jamal reached Oak Street just as Tanya was inside. He spotted her car, its driver's door still open, and his gut told him this was the place. The note's warning echoed in his head, Aliya was in trouble. He didn't have a plan, didn't even know what he was looking for, but he couldn't turn back now. He approached the warehouse, his heart thudding. Through a cracked window, he saw movement, shadows, voices. Then he heard a girl's voice, sharp and scared. "You don't have to do this," she said. "Just let me go." Jamal's breath hitched. That had to be Aliya. He crouched low, scanning the area. The door was open, but going in blind felt like a bad move. He needed help. He pulled out his phone, but the battery was dead. Frustration surged through him. Then he saw it, a figure moving inside, not one of the guys, but someone else. A woman, creeping through the shadows. Tanya. Inside, Tanya was close enough to hear Aliya's voice now, steady despite the fear. "I don't know what you want," Aliya said to the pacing guy. "I didn't see anything. I swear." The guy laughed, a harsh sound that made Tanya's stomach twist. "You saw plenty," he said. "And you ran your mouth." Tanya's mind raced. What had Aliya stumbled into? Prom was supposed to be a night of fun, not this. She scanned the room, looking for anything she could use, a weapon, a distraction. Her eyes landed on a metal pipe leaning against a wall. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. She inched toward it, her movements slow and silent. But before she could grab it, the second guy turned, his eyes narrowing. "Who's there?" he barked. Tanya froze, her heart in her throat. Aliya's head snapped up, her eyes wide. "Mom," she whispered. Jamal heard the shout from outside and knew he couldn't wait. He slipped through the door, staying low. The warehouse was a maze of crates and shadows, but he followed the voices. He saw Aliya first, tied up and scared but alive. Then he saw Tanya, caught in the open, the two guys closing in. One of them grabbed her arm, and she swung, her fist connecting with his jaw. The guy stumbled, cursing, but the other was already moving toward Aliya. Jamal didn't think. He grabbed a loose board from the floor and charged, swinging it at the second guy's back. It hit with a thud, and the guy went down, groaning. Tanya spun, her eyes meeting Jamal's. For a split second, they were strangers united by one goal: save Aliya. The fight was messy, desperate. Tanya untied Aliya while Jamal kept the first guy at bay, dodging a wild punch. Aliya was shaking but fierce, kicking out at the guy as soon as her hands were free. Together, the three of them scrambled for the door, the guys shouting behind them. They burst into the night, piling into Tanya's car. She floored the gas, the warehouse shrinking in the rearview mirror. Aliya was sobbing now, clinging to her mom's arm. "I'm sorry," she kept saying. "I didn't mean for this." Tanya's hands gripped the wheel, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. "You're safe now. That's all that matters." Jamal, in the back seat, was quiet, his mind still reeling. He just wanted to do the right thing, and somehow, he'd ended up here. At the police station, the story came out in pieces. Aliya had overheard a deal at Prom, something shady involving those guys and a stolen car ring. She tried to slip away, but they'd caught her, dragged her to the warehouse to scare her into silence. The pregnant woman on the bus. She'd been part of it, too, but guilt had eaten at her. She'd seen Jamal's kindness and slipped him the note, hoping he'd step up. And he had. The police rounded up the guys, and the case started to unravel. Tanya hugged Aliya so tight it hurt, her fear giving way to relief. She turned to Jamal, her voice thick. "You didn't have to help us. But you did. Thank you." Jamal shrugged, a shy smile breaking through. "Just did what felt right." Days later, life was settling back into place. Aliya was home, her prom dress ruined but her spirit intact. She and Tanya talked more now, about fear, trust, and the kind of strength that shows up when it counts. Jamal went back to his routine, but the note stayed in his pocket, a reminder of the night he'd changed everything. The town buzzed with the story: a missing teen, a mom's courage, a stranger's kindness. It wasn't just a headline, it was a lesson. Sometimes, the smallest choices, giving up a seat, checking a laundromat, following a gut feeling, can ripple out, saving lives, building bonds. As Aliya laughed with her friends again and Jamal boarded the bus home, they carried that truth with them. In a world that can feel dark, one act of heart can light the way.